Hi there, I'm Jack. Today I'm going to show you how to create color gradients in p5.js. Let's get started. So first, open your p5 web editor in any browser that you like. And let's start with a blank canvas. If you like to create a color gradient, let's say if you want to create a color gradient for the entire canvas, what we can do is to use repetition. And in order to do repetition, usually we would use a for loop. So let's get started. For loop, and I'm going to start with 0 and then end with, let's say if I have color gradient from top to down. In that case, I'm going to use the height for the limit for the maximum value for I, and then I++, meaning I would increment after each iteration. And what I'm going to do is to draw a rectangle. And what I will do is to use 0 as the x value and use the I as the y value. And then finally, I like to draw a rectangle as big as the canvas, width and height. There we go. You might say it doesn't look like canvas. That is because we are drawing so many canvases, so many rectangles, and the stroke of the rectangle is black, and that's why we are seeing almost pitch black canvas. So let's try to change a couple of things. One is we can see what's going on if we change this increment value to a slightly larger value, like so. So here you can see clearer that there are multiple rectangles, but because they are layered one after the other, it's a little bit hard. It's still fairly abstract. What you see is really just stripes. But what we can do now with this is that we can color the rectangle from top to bottom with different colors. And if we change the color gradually, what we will see is going to be a gradient. So what I'm going to do is, before I start coloring them, I'll give some variables to the x, y, and width and height. So I'm going to start with x as 0, y is going to be the same as I, and then the w, width of the rectangle is going to be width. And technically, for the height, it's really, it can be like anything. It can be anything that's larger than the increment that you're using. So for now, I'm going to just call it height. And now it's hopefully a little bit clearer. I can do x, y, w, h. So here we have, again, the same kind of rectangles, one after the other. And now what we can do is we will fill a color. Let's start with just gray color, so with one number. Either we can fill it with white, nothing changed. Fill it with gray, everything becomes gray. But instead of these, we can map the value I, which is the y-axis, or I can use y. I'm going to map the y from 0 to height, which is the original range of the y value, to 0 to 255. That is going to be the lightest to the darkest, or the darkest to the lightest I'm going to have. So I'm starting from the top, so that's why at the very top it's black, and at the very bottom is it's white. And here we have a gradient. And let's do a couple of things to improve it. One, we can remove the stroke. So now you can actually see the gradient. And of course, if you zoom in, you will see that there are those stripes, and that is because of this number that we're using here. So we can create another variable here, which is increment. Right now I'm starting with 5, and then we can play with this number. So if I change this to 25, you'll see the gradient is more obvious. The changes in the gradient is more obvious. 50 is even more obvious. But as we decrease this number, let's say 2, or maybe even 1, even after you zoom in, you can barely see, you basically won't be able to see the stripes. And that is because right now we are drawing 400 squares, and each square is 1 pixel lower than the other. And now we have a gradient. But this just black and white. How can you create more colorful gradients? Let's rename this color gradients, black to white, and I'm going to duplicate this and create colorful gradient. In order to do that, what we're going to do is, instead of just use one value for the fill, we can use multiple values. And why don't we also give them names? Let's say RGB. So R would equal to this number. And for now, yeah, let's just copy paste this and change R to RGB and then use RGB. Okay, same thing because RGB changed at the same time. So now, what if we assign those values to like a different range? So for instance, instead of 0 to 255, we can assign it to 0 to 100. And now instead of this 0 to 100, I can maybe assign it 0 to 200. This is where we start to have different colors. 255 is like the maximum value you can have. So depending on the number that you're having here, you will have a color gradient of different color. Of course, you can also change the first number, the starting point of the G value. For instance, 200. And so to simplify, we can also, or to make it easier to change, because right now it's kind of hard to tell what's the top color, what's the bottom color. Again, we can create variables. This time I'm going to create, we can put the variable names here for now. So let's say for the top color, I like it to be, let's say we can use a array to store these colors for now. And for the top color, what I'm going to do is, let's say if I want to start with red, which is going to 255 to 00. And then for the bottom color, I'm going to do, so starting from red, let's see, maybe yellow. So I believe it's going to be 255, 255, and 0. So how are we going to use this? So we kind of need to separate, because the first value is red, second value is green, and third value is blue. What I'm going to do here is to separate these values. So the first number essentially is the top. So top 0, top 1, top 2. Okay, we are starting at red. And then bottom, do bottom 0, bottom 1, bottom 2. So that's how you can create a color gradient from red to yellow. And of course, we can tweak these numbers. Let's say if you like to change 255, change the first color to, let's change this to 55. So we start with magenta and then goes to yellow. And what if we want the color to be green at the bottom. And maybe start with blue. And here's how you can create that gradient. So this is one way that you can create a gradient. And the one thing that we mentioned earlier, which is the height of this rectangle, what really matters here is the increment. So you, as long as your height is same or larger than the increment, it's essentially the same. So let's say if my increment is 10 and the height is 5, what's going to happen is we're going to have gaps. That is because every time you are jumping 10 pixels, but the height of your stripes is only 5 pixels. Yeah, that's still a really interesting effect depending on what you're trying to do. But if you do put 10, you are going to close that gap. And just to be safe, you can always make it larger, which is why I started with using height of the canvas. And then here I'm going to change that back to increment. So here you have the first way to create color gradient. And I'm going to duplicate this. And now we're going to have the second way. And in order to do that, actually, yeah, let me delete all these. Again, we are starting from a blank canvas. And this time, we are going to use a special mode called WEBGL mode. So the regular mode is P2D. So it's a 2D drawing mode, two-dimensional drawing mode. WEBGL gives us the flexibility of drawing 3D, but in this case, I would like to specify a color for a vertex. And that's how we're going to draw the gradient. So what exactly do I mean by specifying a color for vertex? Let's first of all try to draw a rectangle which fills the entire canvas with vertices. And in order to do that, I'm going to call a function called begin shape and another function called end shape. These are a pair of functions for creating different kind of shapes. And then we can use vertex to specify exactly where we want to draw this shape, like each vertex of the shape. In this case, I'm going to draw a rectangle, but notice how in WebGL, the coordinate system is slightly different. And let's give it a try, and you'll see what I mean. So let's start with 0, 0. I'm going to copy paste 4 numbers in order to create a rectangle. So 100, 100. And maybe I'll do 100, 0 first, and then 100, 100, and then 100, and then wait, 0 and 100. So this creates a square because this is the first coordinate, this is the second coordinate, and I mean the first vertex, second vertex, third vertex, and fourth vertex. And one thing we can do is to actually draw the text. Well, this is a little more complicated in WebGL, so let's leave it there. So what we can do here is now, so that kind of give you an idea of how the coordinate system works. So the 0, 0 is actually at the center. So if I like to draw a rectangle for the entire canvas, what I need to do is minus width divided by 2, which is the top left corner, and then minus height divided by 2. Yeah, that's the top left corner. And then the second value, which is going to be a top right corner, is going to be width divided by 2, and still height divided by 2. And finally, the bottom right corner is going to be width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. And then the bottom left corner is going to be minus or negative width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. So here we have a canvas. But why did I create a rectangle? What's really gonna help there? I'm also going to remove the stroke just so that it's just the fill color. And that is because once we create, I can put stroke outside because I want it to apply to for the shape. It makes a little more sense to put it outside. And because I want to have a gradient for the entire canvas, so first I drew this rectangle that covers the entire canvas. Then what we can do is with WEBGL is that we can fill color for each vertex. And that's really where this gets really powerful. So for instance, let's fill the top 2 corner as black, and then the bottom 2 corner as white. Here we have a gradient from black to white. And then of course we can also specify color for individual vertices. So what if I want this to be white, and I want this to be black, and the last one I want it to be back to white. Here we have a great diagonal gradient.
Thank you.
Okay, my Siri is really making a noise. I didn't really try to trigger it. So yes. So now let's try to get to colorful gradient. And before doing that, let's save this. So again, this is version 2 and diagonal gradient. And then let's duplicate and try to add color to this. And this time it's really self-explanatory because we can simply specify all the colors that we want. So 255, 0, 0. I can get red in that corner. And then let's just try to get all different kind of color in each corner. And I get green on the top right corner. And then for bottom right, I'm going to use a blue color, 0 and 255. And then for bottom left, I'm going to use the yellow color we picked. So this is how we create a color gradient with in the WebGL mode. And without getting into too much specifics, in this, because we're drawing a rectangle, the way the color right now, the way we are drawing these 4 colors, because of the way we're drawing these 4 colors, it's really, there's like a sharp line in diagonally, and that is, we can solve that by drawing more vertices and in a grid. But for now, let's kind of go back to drawing color gradient from top to bottom. That way we won't need to worry about this this diagonal sharp line. And if you want to do that, what we can do is simply like this. So if you have some color on the top, color at the bottom, then it would be perfectly smooth. And then now you can specify any color. And of course we can name our color either in the draw or in setup, or like before setup. We can specify these colors. Let's see, const top color. Again, we can specify color with a array. So let's see if we want to start with something like purple, or maybe this will be more of a magenta. And then bottom color with yellow. So now we can use the top color over here on the top, and then we can use the bottom color over here at the bottom, and try to run this. So we get from magenta on the top to yellow at the bottom. And now you can just simply specify these. So let's change this to colorful top to bottom. And then, of course, with this method, you see we were creating this using these vertices to create a rectangle that's as big as the canvas, and you can always make a smaller one by adjusting these values. And we can also use variables to control them as well. So let's say we can create variables that's called the width of the rectangle. So rectangle width, let's say if we want it to be 100, rectangle height, maybe we want it to be 200. So now instead of the width, I'm using Command D on my Mac. You can use Control D on Windows or Command D on Mac to select the next of the same occurrences, like select height and then Command D, Command D, Command D, and change this to rect height. Okay, so now you have the ability to also adjust the size of your gradient, a gradient block. So let's say if I change this to 300, it becomes wider. 300 becomes taller. So that just to show you a little more flexibility. So here we have it. These are two ways to create color gradients. And as an exercise, maybe you can try how to create a radial gradient that's in which case the color is going to start from the center and then gradually go, when it get closer to the outside of the circle, it changes to a different color. So, and if you do it, let me know, post a comment, and I would love to see what you come up with this. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and bye.